Thigmotropism. Thigmotropism refers to the growth of plant parts in response to touch stimulus. Growth of plants in response to touch stimulus is known as thigmotropism. So the stimulus here is touch. Now we have some examples, simple examples or familiar examples for thigmotropism. For example, sweet pea. All of you might be familiar with sweet pea. They have some coiled wire-like structures which we call as tendrils. Another example is cuscuta. So both of these sweet pea as well as cuscuta, they have tendrils or wire-like structures, coiled wire-like structures, which help them to coil around other plants for support. So when these tendrils come in contact with the support as a result of the touch stimulus, that means it is coming in touch with the support, it will coil around that particular support. So these tendrils help these plants in climbing up other plants for support. Mainly these sweet pea, cuscuta, all are weak stemmed plants. So they need some support in order to grow. So for that they have modified structures which we call as tendrils. So the tendrils in these sweet pea and cuscuta are actually examples of thigmotropism. So here what happens is the stimulus is first perceived by the tendrils, by the tip of the tendrils, and it will move downwards, or it is transmitted to the basal part of the tendril. Finally the entire tendril becomes sensitive to the touch stimulus and helps the plant in coiling or climbing up the support. You can see the support here. This is a weak stemmed plant and it has modified structures called tendrils. So this is stem tendril. Same way we can observe tendrils along with the leaf also. So leaf tendrils as well as stem tendrils are present. The next and the last in the tropic movement is chemotropism. So the response of plant parts towards certain chemical compounds we can call as chemotropism. So growth of plant organs in response to chemicals is known as chemotropism. And here we have 2 or 3 examples. First one is the movement of the fungus. We know the fungus, they are undergoing nutrition, that is heterotrophic nutrition. They depend on the decayed matter or some rotten material for their nutrition. So mainly these fungus, they grow towards the areas which are richer in food with the method called chemotropism. Movement of tentacles in Drosera towards the source of nutrition. This is another example of chemotropism. Drosera is an insectivorous, it is a carnivorous plant and it feeds on insects. And the tentacles are used for capturing the insects. And these Drosera plant, also known as sundew, they have leaf with mucilaginous glands, and these leaves with mucilaginous glands, they help in the digestion of the insects which are being captured by the tentacles. So in Drosera, the movement of tentacles towards the source of nutrition is an example of chemotropism. Now the third example is regarding the growth of pollen tube towards the embryo sac. We know female gametophyte or embryo sac that contains the female gamete with which the pollen grain has to undergo the fertilization. So the growth of pollen tube towards the sugars and peptones. Sugars and peptones are the chemicals here which are secreted by the female gametophyte or the embryo sac. So we know pollen tube is carrying the pollen grain from the stigma through the style and finally it reaches the ovary. So the growth of pollen tube towards the sugars and peptones which are secreted by the embryo sac, that is an example of chemotropism. And in this case, sugars and peptones secreted by the embryo sac act as the chemicals or the source of chemicals.